Hello students, let us start lesson number 13, The Adventures of Gulliver. Gulliver's Travel is an interesting book written by a well-known English writer, Jonathan Swift, in which he describes the voyages of Gulliver to various lands like Lilliput and Brobdingnag. Though the character of Gulliver and these strange sounding lands are imaginary, Gulliver's experiences and adventures are written so well that they seem real and true to life. The story we are going to study in this lesson, it is written by a well-known English writer, Jonathan Swift, and he describes the voyages of Gulliver. The main character is Gulliver, and where did he visit? He visited Lilliput and Brobdingnag. These two words sound unfamiliar and strange, isn't it? So, these are strange because these are the imaginary land's name. Those are not real land's name. Now let us see next part. Gulliver, the story tells us, worked as a surgeon on ships. As such, he made several voyages. In May 1699, he sailed on the ship, the Antelope. On the return journey in November, a violent storm sank his ship and Gulliver swam to save his life. Late in the evening, he found himself marooned on a strange land, weak and exhausted. He slept for about 9 hours. It was daylight when he awoke. And in this story, we are going to see his voyage, his experience in his voyage. And before that, let us see how did he go there. It was because of a storm, means strong wind, and he was a surgeon, means what? Qualified to practice surgery, and he was working on the ship, the Antelope. And when he was returning in November, a storm struck his ship and he was marooned, means what? Isolated. He was only one on that strange land, and he was very weak and exhausted. Exhausted means very tired, and because of this he slept for about 9 hours, and when he woke up it was daylight. Let us read what happened next in his own words. Now let us see the story. Gulliver meets the Lilliputians. Lilliputians means the people who live in the land Lilliput, which is not real. I tried to get up from the ground, but I could not move. I was lying on my back. Then I found that my arms and feet were held down to the ground with strings. My hair, which was long, was held down in the same way. Thousands of strings had been passed across my body so that I could not move any part of me, but could only lie there on my back looking up at the sky. And when he woke up, he found himself like this. As we see in this image, many short people, means those are very small in height, they are doing something, or they have tied this man, and this man is Gulliver. They have tied him, and that's why Gulliver could not move at all. He was just lying there looking up at the sky. In a little time, I felt something alive moving on my foot. Then it came over my body and up to my face. Turning my eyes down as much as I could, I saw a man. He was not half a foot high. By his dress, he seemed to be a soldier. Then there came 40 more, following the first. And when he was trying to see what was happening there, he noticed that the people were there was about only half a foot high, means their height was not a foot, it was a half a foot high, and they seemed like a soldier. How did he identify them? Because they dressed like a soldier. I was so much surprised that I gave a great cry. Then they all ran back in great fear, and as I was told later, some of them were hurt in jumping down from my side onto the ground. And he was so surprised to see this kind of short or just half foot high people. he gave a great cry. Means what? He shouted so loudly, and because of his shout, those people got frightened and they started to run here and there, and some of them got hurt because of that. Let us see page number 30. After pulling very hard, I got one arm up from the ground. I also raised my head. This gave me great pain, for many of the hairs were pulled out. I put out my hand to catch some of the little men, but they ran away before I could close my hand on them. Then I heard a noise and felt a pricking in my hand like that of 1,000 needles. I found that they were shooting arrows at me. I was afraid for my eyes. I put my hand over my face. After this, I thought that the wisest thing to do was to lie quiet till night. I thought that then, my hand being free, I could quickly set free the rest of my body. And in this page, we are seeing that Gulliver is trying to get rid of those strings and all those men there. So when he was trying, he found that those people did not like his action, and because of that they started to throw some arrows at him. And as those people were small, their arrows will be small too. So their arrows were like needles, and because of throwing needles it was pricking to Gulliver, and Gulliver was afraid for his eyes. So he decided that he will keep quiet and lie down like that, or he will be in that situation till night, and then he would try to set him free. Soon a platform was raised. An important looking man gave a long speech. From his gestures, I guessed that he was trying to tell me that they would not harm me if I did as they told. I too replied with gestures that I would remain quiet. I also told them that I was hungry. And after some time, a platform was raised. Why? Because to talk with Gulliver. And a man was there to talk, but that was not actual talk, but he was trying to tell something about his gestures. And from that gestures, Gulliver understood that if he did not harm them, they also wouldn't harm him. So he would remain quiet. And he also told them that he was hungry. Gulliver eats a giant meal. Giant means very big, or here giant meal means in very much quantity. At once 100 men climbed up on my body and marched up to my mouth carrying food. The bread was as small as bullets, so I ate 2 or 3 loaves at a time, and cries of surprise rose from the Lilliputians that I should eat so quickly and so much. The Lilliputians were no longer afraid of me. They danced upon my body and ran to and fro. I could have caught at least 40 of them with my hands and thrown them down, but I remembered my promise to remain quiet. Indeed, I was surprised at their bravery, for I must have seemed the greatest giant in the world. So, when Gulliver told them that he was hungry, they started to feed him with bread, and their bread was as small as bullets. So, their bread size was very small, as the people were also not a half foot high. So, their breads. So, Gulliver ate 2 or 3 loaves at a time, and people got surprised that how can a man eat like this at a time. And when they just got used to Gulliver, they started to run to and fro. Means they were just running here and there over Gulliver's body. And Gulliver tried to catch them, but then he remembered his promise that he won't hurt them, so he remained quiet. And Gulliver also thought that for them he was the greatest giant, he was the biggest man in the world. Later, I was taken to the city where the king lived. A great cart was made by joining many carts. 900 men worked for 3 hours to put me onto the cart, which was drawn by 1500 of the king's finest horses. The city was just half a mile away, but the journey took almost a full day. Now Gulliver was taken to the king's palace to meet him, but it was not easy to take him. Why? Because a great cart was made to join the many carts, and 900 men worked for 3 hours, and it was means that palace was not a mile away, but that journey took almost a full day. Now let us see page number 31. Gulliver's new home. The king came out to meet me. He came near and looked at me, but it was not thought safe for him to climb upon me. Their king was also excited to see the Gulliver, but like other men, he could not climb up on Gulliver. At the place where the cart stopped, there was an old church. It was the largest building in the whole country. For certain reasons, it had not been used as a church for many years. It had now been made ready for me to use as my house. The great door on the north was 4 feet high and 2 feet wide, so I could go into it by going down on my hand. One of my feet was set in a great ring on the end of many strong strings, so that I could not get away, but could only walk some distance outside my door. The country outside looked like a garden. Now let us see the home where Gulliver was living. So it was an old church, and it was the largest building in their whole country. And how was it? It was 4 feet high and 2 feet wide, and that was old church, but they were not using it for some purpose. So he had lived there, but how one of his feet was set in a great ring, so that he could not escape, or he could not just run and hurt others. And Gulliver told that the country outside looked like a garden. After some days, the king and his people were convinced that I would not harm them, so after I agreed to keep certain orders of the king, I was allowed to move around. And after some days, the people and king were convinced, means what? They got assurance that Gulliver would not harm them, and he will be free to see their country, but how? Only if he follows the orders of the king. Gulliver visits the city and the queen. As soon as I was set free, I asked if I might see the city. The king was pleased to let me do this. Orders were given to all the people to remain in their houses. I then stepped over the wall and went very carefully along the two largest streets. All the windows were full of faces looking out at me, and large numbers of people were standing on the tops of the houses. The king's house was just at the place where two great streets met. There was a beautiful garden on all sides of it. Lying down in the garden, I put my eye to the windows. The rooms inside were very beautiful. In one room, I saw the queen and some of the young princes. They were greatly pleased by my visit. In this paragraph, we will see the Gulliver, we will see the visit of Gulliver, and he was so pleased to see the country. And as the people were very small there, so when Gulliver was walking over the streets, it might be possible that uh, some people came under his feet. So all the peoples were ordered to remain in their houses. And Gulliver also were Gulliver was also happy to see the people there, and all people were very excited to see him. So in this picture also we see that in windows we see many faces. Gulliver liked the king's house also, and how was it, or where was it? It was at the place where two great streets met, and there was a garden on all sides of the palace. And when he looked inside the palace, he saw the queen and some of the young princes. And those people were very greatly pleased by Gulliver's visit. And after listening this story, if you are excited to know what happens further, you need to read that story which you will find in Gulliver's Travel. This is a name of the book where you will get exciting stories. Now let us turn to our exercise. First question: how was Gulliver tied down on the seashore? What did the important looking man tell Gulliver? How was Gulliver taken to the city? Describe Gulliver's home in Lilliput. Describe Gulliver's walk around the city. So, these are the questions. You should write the answers in short, not in one or two lines. Try to describe it in more lines as I have given here. Question 2. It is a activity, so you should do it by yourself. Tell any one of the stories orally imagining you are Gulliver. So now you should imagine that you are Gulliver and you should share your experience. Question 2. Write any one of these stories not as told by Gulliver but by some other person. This is a story that Gulliver told us, but you should imagine that it is telling or it is told by other person. Imagine that you are in a land of tiny people like Lilliput. Write about some of the interesting things you might see there, including animals, houses, plants, vehicles, etc. Find an interesting name for this land. As Gulliver visited many lands, or we have seen the land here Lilliput, you should also imagine yourself in that kind of land and you should name that differently, and you will describe how were the things there like animals, houses, etc. 4. If you were to grow very tiny like a Lilliputian, what are the things you would like to do? Write about any three of these things. This is very interesting question, and in this question you are asked to write your experience as you are like a Lilliputian. Means if you are in height of a Lilliputian, what would be the things for you or what would you like to do? Question 3. It's a language story. Read the highlighted words, they are adverbs. Adverbs means these are the words that tell us something more about a verb. As the I was pulling hard, in this first question or sentence, the word hard is adverb. Like, away, later, carefully, and greatly are the adverbs. Question 2. Find suitable adverbs for each of the following verbs. So here are some verbs and you should write adverbs for them. Question 3. Find the opposites of the following adverbs. Here are the adverbs and you should write their opposites. In this way we have finished the lesson and its exercise. Thank you.